Hi, welcome to the Physical Educator. Today we're doing topic 6, components of fitness. To make sure you don't miss out on any of the updates, please subscribe to the channel and click on the little bell for notifications. You can also follow P updates on Twitter at P-Educator. Components of fitness, let's go. As you can see with the objectives, there are only 3. It's a really small subtopic. However, all 3 topic areas are either objective 2 or 3, meaning you have to go into detail with each. You have to be able to identify, describe, and explain with examples each of the components of fitness and the tests that are required. So the first topic point here wants us to distinguish between health and skill-related components of fitness. And as you can see in the diagram, there's 5 health-related components and 6 skill-related components of fitness. The easy way for me to remember these is looking at the skill-related components of fitness. Look at the first letter, ABCPRS. Try and remember that, ABCPRS, and that acronym should help you to remember the skill-related components of fitness. The other components of fitness, health-related, so we've got body composition, CV endurance, flexibility, and then endurance and strength, both muscular. And that is the difference between health and skill-related components of fitness. So we're going to start with the health-related components of fitness, and we're going to start with body composition. Now, body composition is the percentage of body mass made up of fat, muscle and bone, and it differs between different sports and different positions as to what is optimal. To help with this explanation, we're going to look at somatotypes. We have 3, ectomorph, mesomorph and endomorph. An ectomorphic character, an ectomorphic body type, is narrow hips, narrow shoulders, very slight frame. A distance runner is a classic example of an ectomorph body type. A mesomorph, narrow hips, broad shoulders through muscular development, usually refers to a muscly position or muscly athlete such as a boxer, a sprinter, or anyone who seeks that for their position in their sport. And they're a mesomorph. We also have an endomorph, and it is advised in certain sports to possess excess body fat. It is advantageous. Sumo wrestlers, forwards in rugby, certain defensive positions in American football, all gain advantage from having more body fat, therefore more mass, therefore they're harder to shift and move within their sport. And that's body composition. With all of these health-related components of fitness, we also have to have a health consideration. And the health consideration for body composition is simply to have less body fat. That is the recommendation by the World Health Organization and would be by your GP if you were to visit them. So from a health perspective, less fat. But for a sports position, completely dependent on what sport it is that you're playing and the position that you are in. Next, we have cardio-respiratory fitness, also known as CV fitness and aerobic capacity. Now, cardio-respiratory fitness is referring to exercising the whole body repeatedly without tiring. And then last 2 parts are really key here. Repeatedly without tiring. Really, really important to remember them aspects, because what we're talking about here is 20 minutes plus, 25 minutes plus, 1 hour plus, but staying at the intensity that's required and being able to maintain the level of performance and keep going. And that's what's really, really key with cardio-respiratory fitness or CV endurance. Any examples where an athlete requires to stay at a high intensity for a long period of time, so many games, players, but the examples I'll use are going to be cycling, because I want to make a comparison with muscular endurance shortly, but then also cross-country skiers. And if you've looked at VO2 max before, you will know that cross-country skiers possess the highest VO2 max of many athletes. 94 is the score for their VO2 max. Really, really high. Really fit athletes. Cardio-respiratory fitness, unbelievably high. Again, a health consideration with the cardio-respiratory fitness. I'm going to use an S analogy now. We're going to have an S for each of the health-related components of fitness, apart from body composition, and the S is going to be steps for cardio-respiratory fitness. Just stay moving. So if you're not sporty and you're looking for a health consideration or a health requirement, your cardiorespiratory fitness, just move steps. Whether it's jogging, cycling, walking, up and down stairs, whatever it is, move, burn them calories. You won't therefore develop too much body fat, which is also the recommendation for body composition. Next, we have flexibility. Now, flexibility is the range of movement available at the joints. And it's really important in many sports. It can improve the aesthetic performance, the aesthetic appreciation within a dance performance or a gymnastic performance, where you can extend your leg perfectly straight or your arm. You can do so at a higher angle, really point your toes, hold that position, and flexibility is key within this to hold your aesthetic appreciation within the performance. However, it's really important in many other sports too. It's really important to improve speed and power, such as a golf swing. The more rotation a golfer can get, generating more power, and also a swimmer with the shoulder flexibility can help to generate power and speed in the water. A health consideration for flexibility, if we're using the S, it's socks. Everyday activities, putting on your socks, picking something up off the floor, being able to bend around the corner of something, really important fundamental skills that you carry out on a daily basis based on flexibility. And as you get older, that flexibility obviously decreases. Next, we've got muscular endurance. Now, muscular endurance is different to cardiorespiratory fitness. It's different. And listen to the two explanations side by side. Cardiorespiratory fitness, we looked at that earlier. That is referring to exercising the whole body repeatedly. Muscular endurance is looking at the isolated muscle, the localized muscle, and the workability, the repeatability of that muscle. Now, there's a difference. Cardiorespiratory fitness, you're working the whole body, it's measured by heart rate intensity, and that's what we're looking at. Muscular endurance can be measured, and we can view it in a sports science world by looking at the lactate, the amount of lactic acid built up in that muscle itself. The one muscle. Is that muscle fatiguing? Never mind the rest of your body, is the muscle fatiguing? Are we accessing our slow twitch fibers, etc.? So muscular endurance, very different from cardiorespiratory fitness. Really important to note that difference. The examples in sports can be the same. We can say cycling, exactly the same, but instead of looking at the heart rate of the cycler, we would look at the localized muscular endurance, mainly within the leg muscles. Also tennis or basketball are other examples where you're repeatedly playing the same shot over and over again, using the same muscles, and if you have strong muscular endurance, more likely your performance won't suffer and your accuracy won't suffer. Health consideration for muscular endurance is the skills that you carry out on a daily basis. Can you repeat them? Can you repeat them and repeat them and repeat them without tiring, without cramping up, without pulling a muscle when you're older? So that health consideration with the S is skills for muscular endurance. And lastly, we have muscular strength, exerting a maximal force against a resistance. Now, this resistance could be an opponent, this resistance could be your own body weight, or this resistance could be a weight or an object, either in the gym or in performance. And muscular strength is vital. It's really important in many sports for obvious reasons, and a classic examples really is a rugby player in the scrum, where it's a static strength that's required, or even in a tackle where it's a more dynamic strength that's required. But it's also for weightlifters or for any other athlete who requires to exert a maximal force within their sport. Health consideration for muscular strength is survival. You're not strong enough to carry out daily activities, if you're not strong enough to move things and move objects, then it could be a problem for you later on in life. So don't forget the S's, apart from body composition, for the health consideration, but mainly we are talking about the impact of sport and these components of fitness. We also have skill-related components of fitness, and we're going to start with agility. Agility is the ability to change direction at speed. Turning, twisting, dodging, whatever that may be. Relevant in all ball sports, in combat sports, in contact sports, where you need to quickly change direction. It's also relevant for elderly people with hypokinetic disorders, and it's a health consideration. ABC, agility, balance and coordination. They're all health considerations. And the health consideration that we need to think about with agility is simply being agile. Can you move to carry out your daily tasks? Can you change direction effectively, even if you're an elderly person with a hypokinetic disorder? Next, we have balance. Stabilizing a center of gravity above a base of support. If you're unsure about center of gravity and base of support, go and check out the biomechanics video to get you up to speed with everything center of gravity related. Now with balance, we have two types. We have static balance and dynamic balance. Static balance, very important for aesthetic sports such as gymnastics and dance. If you can hold a position without wobbling, without moving, perfectly still with your nice flexible limbs, you're going to score more points in the aesthetic sports. Dynamic balance will help sports performers, all of them, whether they need to be balanced in hitting or kicking an object, or whether they need to be balanced whilst running alongside somebody who might be trying to knock them off balance. Dynamic balance is key. A health consideration for balance is to not fall. As you get older with hypokinetic disorders, falling is a common risk, and it is something that leads to most fractures within the elderly population is due to falling. It's hips and wrists due to the falls that are most susceptible to breaking. Coordination is next, and that is the ability to use two or more body parts at the same time. It's usually combining limbs, but it can be using hand-eye coordination or foot-eye coordination. So our examples here, combining limbs could be swimming, it could be basketball or netball where you're performing footwork alongside receiving the ball to your hands. It could also be hand-eye coordination in any racket or ball sport, and also foot-eye coordination in football and American football. The health consideration for coordination is very similar to balance. Falling, losing your balance, and the impact that that can have on your general health. Also dropping objects and losing your coordination, which can then lead to a fall. The last three skill-related components of fitness, we don't need to have a health consideration. Power, strength times speed. The easy way to remember it is to carry out a force against a resistance at speed. Examples here are the hammer throw, or any field event really in athletics, not just the throws, the jumps as well, where you're maximally forcing strength against speed as fast as possible. Golf is another example where you're trying to produce power in your backswing and take that through impact of the golf ball. Next, we have reaction time, the time taken to respond to a stimulus. So it's the onset of movement against that stimulus. So it's really important here not to get this confused with agility. This is the initial stage. There's the reaction. I've reacted to that movement. The agility will follow. Both skills can be worked on independently and then brought together to create the whole move, if you like. Sprinters need reaction time at the start of the race. Badminton players or tennis players need reaction time after every shot. So you could argue the reaction time is far more important for a racket sport player than it is for a sprinter. Look at Usain Bolt, fastest man alive, not the best starter out of the blocks. Is it tactical, or was he not a good starter? Different topic, different day. And lastly, we've got speed, the rate at which a task is completed. Could be body speed, or it could be object speed, such as a bicycle in a cycling race. And there are two examples: a sprinter running down the track, or a cyclist sprinting on a bike. And lastly, we're looking at fitness tests. Now, there's a variety of fitness tests. There's hundreds and thousands of different fitness tests for each of these components of fitness. And remember, the reason we do fitness testing is to measure the current level of fitness for that particular component of fitness. Could be pre-season, could be during the season, could be at the end of the season, it could be after injury to show reversibility, it could be after injury just to see where you're up to. There's many reasons. Could be identifying strengths and weaknesses. There's many reasons why we do fitness testing. And there's many different ways of doing fitness testing. And because there's such a variance here, there's also a large scope for error. And that's what we're going to look at here really. So we're going to go through each of the components of fitness. We're going to give some examples that can be used, the most common types of tests for each component of fitness. For each one, we're going to look at protocol, how to carry out the test. So you can do repeatability, therefore reliability should be, accounted for. We're also going to look at validity, how valid the test is for what you're trying to test, and also limitations to the test. Now, if you want more information on limitations, validity and reliability, check out the video 6.2 on study design. That should be able to help you further with that. Once you're clued up, we're ready to progress. Firstly, we're going to look at the health-related components of fitness, body composition first. Many types, like I've said, many types. We're going to look at BMI, body mass index, and also skin fold calipers. So validity, is the test valid to measure body composition? Well, it is. However, BMI has a low accuracy and studies show a low correlation. And the reasons for this, BMI is useful if you're a sedentary person. It's useful if you don't exercise a lot and you go to the hospital or the doctors and they want to just figure out your BMI and see what your percentage of body fat is. It's got a little bit of accuracy there. In the world of sport, not so much, because muscle weighs more than fat. So if you were to take Usain Bolt's height and his weight, or if you were to take Educ8or, who plays for Wolverhampton Wanderers in the Premiership football, some American footballers who are very muscly, Johan Blake, sprinter, 6'1", extremely muscly. If you were to take any of these characters, Serena Williams, if you were to take her height and weight, it would come back and show for any of these athletes, more than likely that they're obese based on their height and weight, because muscle weighs more than fat. And this isn't really counting for that. So BMI does have a low accuracy and low correlation depending on how it's used. Not really effective within the world of sport. Skin fold calipers can be very accurate, but it takes thousands of attempts at practicing to get the right area on the body. You have about 7 or 8 skin fold sites that are used within sports science, and you simply pinch, as shown on the diagram, these areas. And the more that is pinched in these areas shows an increase of body fat, again, in them areas. But it's very difficult to do. It's very difficult to set up. It's very difficult to administer. So again, it's very, very low accuracy, low correlation. Not the best tests for body composition. Reliability issues, well, as we know, just like when you're told to stand on the scales or not at the different times of the day, it's the same with your BMI, it's the same with your skin fold calipers. We fluctuate in body weight, we fluctuate in retaining water, many reasons that we fluctuate throughout different times of the day. So that can bring inaccurate results, even if you've administered the test exactly the same. So if you are to use these methods, because they're cheaper, they're easier to do than some of the alternatives, then consider the time of day that you do it, particularly if you're using this for your IA. Think of what time in the day you are doing this and make sure it's the same. Skin fold calipers can also vary between testers. So if you're doing repeated tests of skin fold calipers, make sure it's the same person testing. Really important. Limitations, well, as we've already said, it doesn't determine between lean muscle and fat mass. Big problem, and skin fold caliper is very largely dependent on human error. A more effective method for measuring body composition is hydrostatic weighing, underwater weighing. It's a simple system that just accounts for the lack of gravity being underwater, can really separate the weights quite easily. But then also there's many machines now that electronically can measure BMI much more accurately when you're plugged up to them machines. It's probably the best bet if you have access to them. Moving on to cardio-respiratory fitness. The protocol, it's either the bleep test or the 12-minute Cooper run that we're going to look at. Now, either of these tests are fantastic for measuring cardio-respiratory fitness. Protocol is in the top left-hand corner. You can see how they're done. You've probably done these before in P lessons in school anyway. Validity for this test, both of them are extremely accurate at predicting VO2 max. And I've spoke about this before. It's a great idea for an IA to look at this with correlation, to see which one is the best predictive measure of VO2 max. The only issue with this as an IA, you do have to have access to a laboratory where you can actually conduct the VO2 max test itself. If you can do a correlation test with VO2 max against bleep test, VO2 max test against Cooper test, see which one is strongly correlated, and it should hopefully give you something to discuss in your conclusion in your discussion. Reliability, both are very reliable because they're both very simple to set up. However, because of the simplicity to set up, it can also lead to slack setup, which can cause problems with your results. For example, doing the 12-minute Cooper run around let's say you've got a football pitch at school and you do the 12-minute Cooper run around the pitch, that's great. But when the 12-minute hits, you need to know exactly where you are. So dropping cones every 10 meters helps, because then you know to a 10 meter where you finish that test, and you can be more accurate with your result. With the bleep test, just making sure that everybody is aware that if you fail twice in a row, you are done, you are out at that level. So it is reliable, but like everything, it's only reliable if it's reliably followed. The protocol is reliably followed, but it should be quite simple to set up. Limitations, usually conducted in an indoor space or a space that isn't suitable or isn't replicating the sporting arena. So if you're a football player, it makes more sense to do this test on the grass. However, when you're comparing to normative data will be done indoors. So it's a grey area here between the limitations. Yeah, it limits you getting a true fitness score for your sport, but then it makes it hard to compare it to because a lot of the tests are done indoors. So there is a limitation discussion here. Also with the 12-minute Cooper run, there's tactics involved. You can start off too fast, you can start off too slow, so you can run out of steam, or you can finish and think, oh, I could have put a bit more effort in, so I've not got my truest score. Whereas the bleep test, it's making you speed up and speed up and speed up. And the bleep test is more strongly correlated, based on one of my students' findings, to the VO2 max test than the 12-minute Cooper run. And we believe it's for this reason, because tactics are taken out of the equation. So like I said, if you can access the VO2 max test in a lab, it looks a little bit like this. It's a fantastic test. It's similar to the bleep test really, but on a machine plugged up. You run to maximum till you're exhausted and you drop off the side of the treadmill. And it's a fantastic test if your school can access it. It's quite expensive. Have a word with them, see what they say, see if there's an IB budget. Moving on to flexibility. Flexibility, I want to make one thing clear here. This isn't flexibility for your whole body. This is not flexibility for a swimmer looking at shoulder flexibility. This is flexibility for the lower back and hamstrings, the sit and reach test. And the protocol, again, you've probably done this in lessons. Shoes off, knees straight, stay along the floor. Do not bounce into the stretch because you will go further and potentially harm your hamstring. You want to slowly push the little magnetic ruler to your maximum 3 attempts. Record your best. Little warm up before, but this is where reliability comes in, because if you do allow a warm up before the test, allow the same warm up for everybody. And if you're doing repeated tests, ensure that there's a warm up done twice. Again, this could be a nice IA. One group without a warm up, one group with a warm up, and see the difference on certain tests. One being sit and reach, and the flexibility difference between a warmed up athlete and a non-warmed up athlete. Limitations, it is limited. There are limitations, there are issues, and you will get irregular results if you do a lot of subjects, which hopefully you can do to allow for anomalies that don't ruin your results. Arm, leg and trunk length can massively play a factor here. We've all seen people with short bodies, long arms, long legs, whatever it may be, and because of the nature of this test, one of them things being slightly off can create problems with your results. Muscular endurance. Protocol can be anything from a 30-second push-up test, 30-second press-up test, or even a 60-second one, depending on your ability. Make sure it's done correctly. Press-ups are usually done with a fist to the chest, so you go low down. Sit-ups are usually all the way up to the knees. I would avoid using things like a plank, because you can hold a plank position without actually engaging your core, which is why a lot of us believe we can hold a plank position for 5 or 6 minutes. If we actually engaged our core, squeezed our bum cheeks, squeezed our quadriceps and our hamstrings, and held in that tight core, where we suck our belly button into our spine, there's not a chance many of us are getting anywhere near 5 minutes. So I would avoid plank for muscular endurance, just because the nature that you can cheat, and the press-up test and the sit-up test are much better. Validity, yeah, for the targeted muscle groups. If you wanted to look at muscular endurance in your quadriceps, you're not doing a 30-second push-up test, because it's not going to measure your quadricep. It wouldn't be valid. It has to be for measuring the specific muscles that you're targeting. Reliability, very simple methodology to follow, but again, because it's very simple, it can be done incorrectly because we slack off with certain key details, making sure that every repetition is done correctly. Limitations, practice, technique and motivation can affect this massively. The more you practice, the better you get at the technique. And motivation levels, you might give up. You might one day have a spur of adrenaline, another day you might not. So there are factors that can limit the results with the muscular endurance test. And lastly, muscular strength, we've got the hand grip dynamometer test and also the 1 rep max. Now the 1 rep max is the best test to do, of course it is. However, it's very valid, but the 1 rep max test is also very reliable. The limitations with the 1 rep max test is ensuring that you know what your 1 rep max is. Because if you're in the gym and you lift something and you can go for a second rep, okay, add a little bit more weight, let's go again. Okay, add a little bit more weight, let's go again. All of a sudden, you're getting quite tired and it's not your true representation of your 1 rep max. So it might take time for you to find out that weight. And you might even have to come back on a different session, energy levels high, knowing the weight that is going to be your 1 rep max to do so. So it's not really time efficient if you don't know what you're doing. It can be difficult to administer. Unbelievably accurate when done correctly. With regard to the hand grip dynamometer test, I'll be honest, I spent many years of my teaching career not really knowing why we're using this test. And it has directed me to research into this further. And the hand grip dynamometer test obviously measures your grip strength. And for a long time I thought, well, rock climbing, maybe judo if you're grabbing on your opponent's clothing as you're trying to take them down. But actually there's strong suggestions and studies to suggest, and again, this could be a good IA for you to look at, that hand grip strength, measured by your hand grip dynamometer, is directly proportional to your actual 1 rep max. So you could do 1 rep max squats with a barbell, you could do 1 rep max bench press, you could do hand grip dynamometer, and again, you could look at correlation between all of your subjects to see if they are related, to see if there is a strong correlation between the different 1 rep maxes and the hand grip dynamometer strength test. So agility, again, like every other component of fitness, there's many tests that you can do. One of the most renowned ones is the Illinois agility test. I'll give you a bonus point if you can tell me where it originated from. Now, the Illinois agility test looks like it does in the protocol here, and the idea is it's not measuring speed, it's measuring your ability to continually change direction quickly and get from A to B. Just like in many games where you've got to be quite nimble and agile from changing direction with speed. The validity, very valid, because it's rapid changes of speed and it measures your ability to do that. Reliability, once correctly set up, it is easy to follow and there's a high repeatability. Limitations can take some practice to understand where to run next, therefore can be time consuming. Please note my pain in my voice when I say that from the amount of years I've spent recorrecting people running the wrong way. So that is a strong limitation with this test. You've possibly run the wrong way yourself before. Balance. The protocol for balance, again, there's many balance tests. Many of them named after birds. Flamingo test, but we're going to look at the standing stalk balance test. Stand in the position similar to the lady in the picture, and then when you're ready, up onto your tiptoes, close your eyes. See how long you can hold that position for, and that's measuring your standing static balance. It's a great indicator of dynamic balance. It's very, very valid for balance. However, the limitation is we are looking at static balance here. So if you're a games player, a tennis player, where dynamic balance is key for success in your sport, maybe an interesting IA for somebody to look at is the difference between static and dynamic balance and how much of a predictive measure these tests are for balance. So there is a grey area for me. A lot of the balance tests look at static balance. They don't look at dynamic completely, even though it's an indicator of your dynamic balance. You're not going to have woeful static balance and then look like Lionel Messi when you play football. The reliability, very simple to set up, but like with everything that's simple to set up, make sure you don't become complacent and therefore make errors with the protocol. Coordination, again, there's millions of tests. Juggling is a type of a coordination test, but I believe juggling to be a skill. And it's a skill that can be quite difficult to do. So it doesn't mean you've got poor coordination because you can't juggle 4 tennis balls. But a test that is more accurate for hand-eye coordination, if that's what you're looking for. So, a footballer who plays on the wing wouldn't do a wall toss test, because why do they need to know about their hand-eye coordination when the ball's coming to their feet mainly to play their game? If they want to do a type of coordination test, they could do a foot-eye coordination test, but not a hand-eye one. Wouldn't be relevant to them. Goalkeepers, absolutely. And other sports where hand-eye is important, tennis, cricket, baseball, golf, Hand-eye coordination is key, so that coordination test would be valid for them. A wall toss test, again, very easy to set up, very reliable. Stand 1.5 meters away from the wall. From one hand to the other hand, you're throwing the ball against the wall, catching it with one hand and keeping it going as long as you can for 30 seconds. And then there's a penalty if the ball drops. Limitations, if the ball drops. Throwing and catching ability is a massive factor here in measuring your coordination. Also the type of wall and the type of ball. So if you are using the wall toss test for any IA stuff that you do, ensure that these things are accounted for to make sure there isn't any reliability issues. Power. Again, two great tests, standing broad jump, standing vertical jump, both looking at leg power, mainly power from your lower body, either in a vertical setting or a horizontal setting. Again, a wonderful IA. See which one of them is best representative of power, if you can compare them. Probably correlation again. The validity, of course, is valid, but only if you're looking at power in the legs. If you're looking at power from the shoulders, then you're not really going to be looking for these tests. However, an interesting point, can you think of many sports where the power isn't generated from your lower body? There isn't many. There isn't many. So even if you're doing the shot put, a golf swing, the discus, your contact with the ground, your slightly squat position, the twist into the ground from your lower body starts off the power in them moves. Still required, still important. So even though the shot put's coming from your shoulder, as you know from doing it in PE, when you use your shoulder for the shot put, one, it hurts, and two, it doesn't go as far. It's about ground force. It's about contact with the ground, and your legs are in contact with the ground. So there's not many sports really where the standing vertical jump and the standing broad jump wouldn't give you a good indicator for power from the lower body, because it's not just about jumping. Almost every single sport generates power from the ground up. Reliability. Again, very easy methodologies, just make sure you don't get complacent. The standing broad jump, stand from one line, 2 feet, jump, land, measure from your back point, from your back heel. Standing vertical jump, you can do it without anything, just a bit of chalk on your finger, stand against the wall, jump as high as you can and slap the wall. What is important is before you do that, you stand against the wall and you reach up as high as you can and you mark that area. For simple maths, let's say you're 1.5 meters tall and you jump to 2.5 meters. That means your jump is 1 meter because you're 1 meter above your maximum reach. This way it's fair if someone who's vertically challenged in your class goes up against the man who sleeps in the greenhouse. So we've got someone 4'5" against someone 6'5". It's still a fair test because it's about their maximum height and then the distance above their maximum height. Very important to consider with the standing vertical jump. Limitations. Amount of warm-up allowed, similar to the flexibility test. This could be a good IA to look at some of these tests. One group with a warm-up, one group without. Obviously, there's an ethical consideration for injury, so do be careful. Technique is also an issue. Efficient jumpers will score highly. And I've had this test before when I'm looking at a group of students, I'm thinking, yeah, you're definitely winning this. No. And then somebody who I never expected, really springy, jumps really, really high, and an unbelievable leap on them. So there are other factors that can determine this, and it's not just leg power alone that generates the jump for the test, but it is a good indicator nonetheless. Next is reaction time. Ruler drop test is the easiest way of doing it. Get somebody to hold the ruler in front of you without telling you, they drop it, and you see how quickly you can catch the ruler. They obviously can't tell you, I'm going to drop it in 3, 2, 1, because then you'll catch it straight away. The idea is they catch you off guard and you see how quick you can react. A meter ruler is good to use, but the truth is you should be able to use a 15 or a 30 centimeter ruler, because if you don't stop it within that time, then there's something seriously wrong with your reaction time and you might need to go back and review it. So 15 centimeter ruler should be good enough, but you can use a meter one if you wish to. The validity, yes, it's valid. It is recognised as an appropriate method, but there are more valid tests. This one's easier to do because we can do it in the classroom and it doesn't cost a great deal of money. Better ones to use would be things that you might see in arcades or within sports science, where it's lights that are lighting up and you've got to touch the different lights to react in time. Very reliable, yes. because of the simple methodology. Very, very easy to follow. Again, like with the others, just don't get complacent. And lastly, the limitations. Is there a relevance to many sports of dropping a ruler? Unsure of the relevance. Can practice this test to enhance score, even though not a representation of real improvement. So there is some limitations with this test, and there are better reaction time tests out there that we should probably look to try and get hold of as part of our AA if we can do, if that's what we're wishing to do. And lastly, speed test, 30-meter speed test, very high validity, but the reliability, yes, it's very easy to follow, but two, it's probably the test I've seen done wrong the most working in a number of schools. Absolutely massive error that goes on with the 30-meter sprint test. You set up two cones 30 meters apart and you sprint in between them cones. That is not the 30-meter sprint test because you're not excluding acceleration. The test itself should look like this on the screen now. You have a 5-meter warm-up zone to get your speed up. Then from 5 meters to 35 meters, that's what you measure, and that's the 30-meter sprint test. You take out the 5 meters acceleration because, as you know yourself, many athletes can accelerate but not necessarily sprint, and other athletes don't accelerate very fast, but when they get up to top speed, they're actually not so bad and quite quick and would surprise you over a 100-meter sprint based on you seeing them over 10 meters. It's important to factor in acceleration and trying to eliminate that so we can purely look at speed. Unit 6, including statistical analysis with standard deviation, t-tests and correlation, including QR codes and suggested reading, as well as study design, different types of tests, components of fitness, and principles of training. Visit the TES website and check out the Physical Educator channel there. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.